Welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review, guys. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson. This is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi, guys.
And tonight we were reviewing that sci-fi Dark City that was released in 1998.
Yeah, very interesting, this one. We like it. We think it's really great.
Yeah.
It's even the critics like it. In general, anyway, you got a couple of people who
this came out probably a year before Matrix.
Yeah, and it came out of the same studio, and I think they used some of the same sets and whatever.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so they had maybe they took a bit of a feeling for this movie and integrated it into the Matrix.
True.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed.
Anyway, do you want me to do my usual?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. Now, this is what really impresses me when people do multiple roles here in the production thereof. So here we go. Produced by Andrew Mason and Alex Proyas. I think it's the right name. That's pronunciation, Proyas. It was directed by Alex. Alex actually wrote the story as well, and Alex co-wrote the screenplay with Flem Dobbs and David Goyer. Now, the part that surprises me is this was a sci-fi with a lot of good sets and everything else, and special effects and whatever, and they did it under budget, on a budget of about $27 million. But it only made about $27 million back at the box office, and I'm just wondering what happened. So yeah, and the reviewers liked it mainly. Some sort of were half. I don't think they really understood the movie because it's one of those sort of weird sci-fi movies.
During test screenings, I think some people were couldn't work out what the story was about.
Yeah, it's a good story. Don't get me wrong, but it's how would you put it? Dystopian society, constantly in darkness. I wouldn't say a disjointed storyline, but it's one you have to sort of piece together a bit like a jigsaw puzzle as you're going along. And all the pieces do come together. And it go, whoa.
Yeah, it's the best way I can describe this movie is I think that it reminds me a little bit of Plato's Republic, if you will,
yes.
where he describes the special cave prisons of the cave theory.
Yeah, there's some sort of about so the people were stuck in the cave, and that cave was their reality.
They become, and the inhabitants in this movie become prisoners of it.
Yeah, in a similar way as the
unaware that they're being prisoners.
They were just being manipulated, but we won't say too much because all will be revealed in the tell of the story.
True. So who stars in this one?
Well, I won't go through everybody. I'll just do the main guys.
Now, good point.
Rufus Sewell, Sewell. I think that's the right pronunciation. Now, I've seen Rufus in a few other movies. I think he was in First Night, some other movies. He's not a bad actor, and I think he really suits this role.
Tales.
That's right. Knight's Tale.
He keeps confusing us with
that. I've got too many movies in my collection. Knight's Tale. Rufus is a good actor, and I think he really suits the lead role in this movie.
What was that role of?
He plays John Murdoch. He is a person who wakes up. Well, I won't say too much because he's the one the story is centered around. Actually, when they started the writing of this storyline, the storyline was going to be centered around the detective who was chasing him.
Oh, cool.
But they got to the stage where they thought maybe it may come better if it's actually based on the guy that the story gets focused on the person he's chasing.
Yeah, just like if The Fugitive.
Wait, there's more. And the guy, John Hurt, he was considered for the lead role instead of Rufus in the early stages. So interesting, hey?
Interesting that. So who's...
I'm moving right along. Yeah, William Hurt, he plays police inspector Frank Bumstead, who's after a serial killer who might be John Murdoch. Keith Sutherland plays Dr. Daniel Schreiber. Interesting role for him. Sleazy, a little bit sinister.
Interesting thing is when they were casting
paranoid
for
schizophrenic
this role,
He was a bit strange.
Anyway, when they were casting the actor for this role, they were hoping for someone a little older, sophisticated.
Yeah.
But I think that they kind of pulled it off by having him in the role.
Hey, Keith Sutherland is a good actor.
Yeah.
I like his dad too.
Yeah,
Donald.
Donald
Yeah,
Sutherland.
he-
You
he-
may have seen him in a number of movies.
I've seen lots of movies over the years.
I never
so-
even knew that they were related until now.
Yeah. Anyway, irrespective, moving right along, Jennifer Connelly plays Emma Murdoch, John Murdoch's
Wifey.
wife.
Don't mention the next
I
part.
won't say the next bit because that'll give the story away. And Richard O'Brien plays, I wouldn't say the leader of the aliens, but one of the main aliens who are pursuing John Murdoch.
Yeah.
And Richard O'Brien was sourced by the producer of this movie after he saw him in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ah, cool.
And he said, that's the image I like, so he went and approached Richard O'Brien and said, will you be in my film, please?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
does have that interesting, sinister look.
Yeah, he wanted the baldness, the sinisterness. Is it a word? Is sinisterness a word? I don't know. It is now. But he saw the image of Riff Raff in Rocky Horror Picture Show and he said, I want Richard O'Brien. So interesting that. I wish someone did that to me and dragged me into a movie or something. We want Jabba the Hutt. There's a fat guy over there. No, that's right. There's some other people here. There's Ian Richardson, Bruce Spence, and some other people in there. But the main ones are the ones I've just mentioned.
You may have seen them in the the poster. That's all four characters'
Yeah.
names are posted on there.
Yeah, they're the main ones. But anyway, irrespective, I'm going to go have another coughing fit in a minute. So Sarah might want to take over telling the story.
Sure thing. So
What?
I'm just waiting for your coughing fit.
No, I'm going to move away from the microphone a minute.
So the story begins. It's dark. It's night.
That's why it's called Dark City.
And it takes place in John Murdoch's apartment. He's sleeping in the bath, and he somehow awakes with amnesia. Sadly enough, and
Bugger.
yeah, and he's a little shaken up because there's a dead woman in his apartment, and he then gets a call from Dr. Schreiber telling him that there's some men coming, and he ought to get out of there.
Now.
Yes. Anyway, so he then runs out, and these how many? About four men.
3 or 4 of them, yeah.
Come
all
out,
dressed the same.
all dressed in the same, all having bald heads and
long black coats and
completely
black
pale.
hats.
And
Hey, the original Men in Black.
yes.
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, they observed the whole place, checked it over, and they tried to figure out what just happened again.
Well, they knew what happened. They set it up.
Yeah, and John heads down to the lobby, and there he meets the landlord, I think it is,
The manager or
who
something.
tells him that he ought to pay for his rent.
His rent's due.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
and that he
go.
has, and his wallet was left at an automat.
some sort of, it's not like a cafe, but it's all service. Yeah, I think it's an automat.
Yeah, so he has to head off down there to get his wallet if he can. And of course, as I said before, he knows that his name is J. Murdoch, but he doesn't know
What
his
J
stands for.
Interesting.
And all through, in one scene, we see him saying, okay, J something, am I Jason Murdoch, John Murdoch,
Jasper,
Jack?
Jeremy.
Yeah. He's trying to remember, but it's a block.
Well, he had no idea who he was. He had no memory at all. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the detective I mentioned earlier, he's in his office and he's working on a case dealing with a slasher killer killing prostitutes. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, anyway, he's on the case and they found a new victim, and they say it was from Mr. Murdoch, and they start to think, he must be a suspect. But they know something weird about the suspect, that in the hotel room, they noticed a fish in the bath, indicating that the glass, the
fish bowl.
fish bowl was broken, and John in his in his innocent nature, he took the fish and put it in the bath.
So it wouldn't die. And
Yeah.
the detective said,
Odd.
strange behaviour for a killer. He
Yeah.
thought, well, he's going to kill somebody there, and he saves a goldfish. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
He then meets up with another colleague of his who is acting rather crazy looking at the moment.
Yes.
Who's saying there's no way out, yada yada,
And he's
weird.
trying to say, it's all an illusion. It's all made up. Yeah. And everyone thinks he's crazy.
Yeah, snafu. So moving on.
Aha.
Anyway, moving on. So John continues his search. He even found a postcard in his bag in a suitcase he had. He threw the suitcase away. I don't know why, to be honest.
Well, it wasn't his.
Oh yeah, good point. But anyway, he then let me see, goes to the automat, and while he's getting his wallet there, he then it was inside one of the what do they call it?
Oh, well, yeah, they've got little compartments on the wall
Yeah,
there.
the
You put food in, you
compartments.
put a coin in or something, right?
Yes,
So
he has
the
no-
guy behind the counter or behind the wall put his wallet in there.
Yeah, so he tries to get the button working, and then unexpectedly, his mind broke the thing.
Broke the door open on this little compartment, and he got his wallet.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
and then he meets up with a prostitute who offers to invite him up to her room, and
And he thinks, I'm going to go test myself. Not in a spiritual sense either.
no.
He's not sure whether he's a killer or not, is he? So yeah.
Meanwhile, while this is happening, let me see. Emma, his wife, she gets contacted by Dr. Schreiber,
Yeah.
and he tells her about how her husband is his
He's patient.
patient, and he tries to explain that her husband has been seeing him for the last couple of
And he's having a bit of a breakdown at the moment.
yeah, and
Nice way to put it.
yeah, their story, Emma and John's story, is that she had an affair and he up and left her in his really
Anger,
angry,
yeah.
and that's the last time she's seen him, so to speak. And so that's pretty much what their story is, and John is still blissfully unaware of what's going on.
He's got no idea. He doesn't even know she exists.
Yeah, and John tries to, but he then decides to up and leave.
He didn't do anything. He didn't have sex. He didn't kill her. Did nothing.
Yeah, he then heads up to a billboard that is above, which has Shell Beach, which is which has on the postcard.
And this becomes an ongoing
This
thing
is
for this movie.
our hero or goal to try to find Shell Beach.
Because that's where he supposedly grew up.
Yeah, see, he has a few flashbacks of him, of the Shell Beach, but not
But not
just
enough
fragments.
of them. No memories because his memory is gone. So
Yeah, he goes up to the billboard, and then he pulls out of his pocket, newspaper clippings saying, "Oh, killer's stalking,
all
killing
these newspapers about all these ladies who have been killed by some stalking homicidal maniac." Yeah.
Yes, and so then the strangers appear. That's what they're called, the strangers, these alien
Good name.
creatures. And they try to use their hypnotic gesture to put him to sleep, but they see throughout this movie, they kind of put everyone to sleep using their hand gesture
I believe
and their mind.
they have the ability of psychokinesis, which means they can manipulate things with their minds.
Yeah, they have the ability to shape the world around
And
everyone.
control everybody in it and whatever. So yeah,
Yes, so
very nice. Wish I had that sometimes.
funny. So anyway, or at least I would love that too. So anyway, our hero fights them off as best he can, and they discover he has the same abilities as them.
Yeah, and he's not one of them. He's only a mere mortal.
Yeah, we then notice right before the story begins that his fingerprints are weird spiral
where
thing.
ours aren't actual spirals. Where it's got
It's usually a lot of
a
circles.
line pattern, whirls, but not a spiral.
Yeah, it's just a really squiggly circle, if you
Yeah,
will.
interesting.
In this case, so anyway, John escapes, and meanwhile, the rest of the strangers deep down below the city, began discussing how this man is dangerous and that they know that he has their ability. They call it tuning, I think it was.
Tuning, yeah.
Tuning.
Now, I'll just stop a minute. All the aliens, they live together underneath the city in a big amphitheatre
Yeah.
type thing. And they've created the city because they're looking for,
The soul.
well, they don't know it's the soul, the thing that makes us individual, our
Yeah.
passion, our drive, the things that makes us unique. They have a hive mentality, which means that they have a common memory and they have a common a common mind, so they're not individual.
Yeah, you see, they have these so they're there to try to study them and try to in order to find the soul, so they could help their
Well,
race.
their race is dying off, and they think by finding what makes us human might help them save their race of whatever they are.
It sounds a little bit when not of the surf where the alien comes there, tries to get blood and tries to help his race, but in this case
Exactly.
it's a little different than that. Obviously.
A bit different.
So-
The Matrix is a bit like too, wasn't it? They had all these people stuff there, alternate reality, all asleep, and they gave them an alternate reality to live with, and
So moving
Interesting.
on, so they then suggest that they'll go search out John Murdoch and make him one of them. Hopefully,
yeah, and they make him their prize guinea pig.
yeah, exactly.
Put him in a wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, John arrives at his apartment, and he meets his wife and says that he's very confused and he can't work out.
He doesn't remember her at all.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And she doesn't really understand why he's like this and stuff like that. And he explains to her that he can't remember the murders and he's definitely not a killer or anything. Of course, not everyone believes him on this front because the detective
He's after him.
yes, and he eventually catch John because he kind of at the time gave Emma. She came to the police station earlier, and he offers her a lift home, and he was still parked outside, and he probably came up to see what's going
He thought
on.
that John might have snuck home to see his wife.
Yeah, there was a bit of a brief chase, and eventually John was able to conjure in his mind and onto the on a wall a door.
To escape.
Yeah.
I wish I had one of those too.
Yeah, and eventually.
Yeah, conjure up a toilet when you're out somewhere. That'd be really good, wouldn't it? Or conjure up a parking space.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, carry on.
Yeah, eventually, he drops the Dr. Schreiber's
Business card.
business card, and he goes off to visit him and talks
Yes.
with him about John and stuff. And let me see. Then this is where it gets more technical. Dr. Schreiber goes to the swimming pool and Mr. Hand.
Oh, yeah, all these aliens use weird names like Mr. Hand, Mr. Book, Mr. Face, Mr. Glove. Yeah.
Yeah,
'cause-
weird names.
Well, because they don't have aliens don't have names that they can use in English, so they just use a name that they've just found.
Makes you wonder if
weird.
if that's a real name or just a code name or
Well,
something.
no, I think it's a name so they had to talk like human beings, communicate with each other, so they just used just one easy one syllable words: hand, book, face. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Han tells him about how that John Murdoch is all of a sudden starting to do their alien abilities, and they want to make another set of memories for a evil or deeper purpose.
Yes, exactly right.
So, anyway, moving on. So, later that night, the strangers are preparing some last-minute memory things, like IDs and stuff like that.
Look, once a day, or every 12-hour period, or 24-hour period, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
every time it hits midnight, there's no day here, you see.
Yeah.
They close everything down and they re-implant different memories in the people to get
Yeah.
a different
Yeah,
response.
and
And they may have to make up letters and photographs and other
yeah,
things.
and Dr.
There's
Schreiber,
props
he's
for them.
the
Yeah.
sort of their associate who who
He-
develops these memories.
Yeah, he
for
knows
them.
how to mix the memories and everything.
Yeah.
The aliens don't have the power. You think these aliens who are so damn advanced can actually do it, but no,
Yeah.
they're using a human being. Yeah,
Yeah, so he mixes it up, making sure that it's. But sometimes I think some of the people, the inhabitants, are starting to notice their memories don't feel real.
Right, yeah, because it's been going on too long, and that's why that police guy
Yeah.
is going a bit weirdo because he's one of the people who became aware of it as well.
Yeah, because one of his associates I mentioned who says that he doesn't remember anything, and he says that every time that he goes to sleep or something, he feels like he's dreaming this life, and he's going to wake up the next morning as someone else.
And that's what was happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he says, it's all fake. It's not real. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no case. That woman out there is not my wife. I don't even know who she is. Yeah. And he's not wrong. You see. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so the detective, he has an accordion he got from his mum, but he doesn't remember when or where she gave it to him.
Yeah. When she supposedly died sometime earlier on, but when he tries to think of how and when and things in the past, it becomes cloudy and very indistinct.
Yeah.
And other people are having the same problem.
Yeah, even memories like if you like Shell Beach I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Every time someone tries to remember where it is, they get this block.
I say, yeah, I used to go there a long time ago. Yeah. And how to get there? And say, I can't remember how to get there. A taxi driver didn't know how to get there. The police guy asked one of the other guys, and he said, "Oh, yeah, it's Shell Beach. And he said, I don't know how to get there." No one knows how to get to Shell Beach, which is just supposedly outside the city limits somewhere.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
So moving back along,
How's
so
it
as
going,
midnight,
folks? Yeah.
so as midnight approaches, they all arrive in the main room, and they start tuning in and sending everyone to sleep. Mike here was giving me an example of how no one has noticed that they
It's
were
all,
doing this.
you know how you sort of have you ever been driving along in your car on a dark night, no lights, no street lights, no nothing, and you zone out for a second or two, and then you wake up and say, "Where am I?" A bit like that. I think those are zoning out, no conscious memory of being asleep, and no sense of time passing, even though it might be half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. They just wake, blink,
Yeah. And before
I'm
you
back again.
and before you
Yeah,
ask me,
yeah.
they don't control time. There's a moment where we see the clock stop moving, the
Yeah.
cars stop working.
The aliens, that's good about this, they make people's cars slow down and stop in traffic and stuff, and then the people just pass out, and then when they wake up, they just keep going again.
Yeah.
So no one's really paying attention to what's happening.
So don't take it wrong that they don't have the power to freeze time, as people say.
No,
I think
they
they
just
do.
put everything to sleep. And
Yeah.
so they're controlling everybody's mind
Yeah.
and all the material things there.
Yeah, and who knows what time it is over there? It may not be midnight. It could be 3 in the
no
morning.
day. There's no day. There's just they leave them stay awake for so many hours, then they close down again.
Yeah.
They just call it midnight. Yeah.
True. So anyway, moving back along. So
Yeah.
they all start tuning in, and they turn off everyone's minds for a couple of
And then see
minutes.
buildings changing
And
and
suddenly
everything
new
else.
buildings start rising and changing, shifting,
There's a
stretching.
working class slob talking to his wife, and he wakes up as a millionaire.
Yeah.
That's he's living in a big house instead of a dumpy apartment.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to program people to get these different responses out of them.
Yeah. So anyway, they then go into the real world, where each of the strangers start adding each new individual into their new role, like adding a new hotel, and they put the person there, and they use a special sort of drill type syringe.
It's like a hypodermic needle.
Yeah.
But it drills in through the bone in the front of your
Brain.
forehead.
Yeah.
And it goes straight to there. Now, I don't have a temporal lobe or wherever it is, or
Yeah. But
right above your nose there. And they go straight in there. There's never a scar there.
No, there isn't. Is there?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so they put it in and they add the new memory thing, and I
Yeah.
guess download the memories, whatever.
Upload, download, sideways load. Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
John is watching this and he's confused and baffled
Because
by this.
he's not being controlled by them anymore.
Yeah, because he's the only one who's not sleeping.
Well, maybe the policeman guy who's a bit crazy might not be sleeping either.
No, there was a scene where you see him just sleeping while
Oh, okay, yeah.
throughout this.
Okay.
So anyway, moving on. So, well, oh no, not that policeman.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
the crazy one.
The crazy one. He's
Yeah.
probably still awake here
Yeah,
and there,
yeah.
but we're not focused on him too
No,
much.
but
in this
there's only two people in the whole place who probably aren't sleeping because they're not affected by the aliens.
Yes, eventually John watches them. He even watches the couple we mentioned where a man has become 1 minute poor as poor, and next minute he's now probably a
Really wealthy man.
wealthy lawyer, millionaire,
Or something, or business executive, or
and
CEO.
his house
or,
has become as big as, well, just big.
we've gone from a 1 or 2 room dumpy apartment into
Say several rooms,
a mansion almost. Yeah.
several 8 rooms or
Well,
whatever.
big,
Or
like a mansion. They're big
yeah.
staircases and stuff. And he said, by the time you wake up, you're gonna have servants as well. You know.
That's
You
what
better- yeah.
John. That's what.
Dr. Schreiber said.
Yeah, he did. Anyway, so he leaves and he encounters John, and John is angry, like he's wondering why is everyone asleep, and he demands answers and all that, and he then, in his fury, used his powers to push Dr. Schreiber off, into the air, and
Yeah.
Dr. Schreiber says, "I can't believe it. You can do it." He was skeptical before because he didn't think he really had this power, but he thinks now that he has this power, he could be able to take the city back and be able to stop these strangers
I know
from
how to
doing this.
tune. I've got a guitar. I tune every. Oh, wrong sort of tuning. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
Eventually, more strangers start coming, so John skitters away, and Dr. Schreiber gives the stranger guys a false story saying that John attacked him and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, he has to cover himself a little bit.
Oh yes, it would really look bad for him if he was conspiring with John. Could you imagine that? That would be very bad. So anyway, moving on. John eventually takes out the postcard again, and he realizes that it's from a guy named Kyle.
Carl, something or other.
Yeah, Carl
That's
Harris.
his uncle.
Yes. So he
Supposedly.
then gets the telephone book and he finds the address and he goes onto the trains and he tries to find where Carl's last address is. And of course he tries to go. There is even a chance he can get onto a train to go to all the way to Shell Beach. But he tried that, but for some reason that he can't
There's
go.
a train keeps going past Shell, and it's got Shell Beach written on it, and it's the express train. It doesn't seem to stop
Yeah,
at any
he even
platform.
yeah. See, he asked the one of the I guess one of the tenant guys saying, "Hey, why didn't that train stop?" And the guy says,
That's the express train.
And then this is where he meets the crazy cop I mentioned, and he then talks to John, telling him about how the strangers keep switching everyone's minds around, back and forth, and no one even knows who they are anymore. Like they don't even know what's going on.
I wake up like that every morning.
Yeah, and he then explains that once in a while, some of the people wake up while they're changing things. It's not supposed to happen, but it does. And but there's still no explanation why John is the only one who can tune while the others
Well,
don't.
he's been programmed by Dr. Schreiber, we find later on.
Yeah. Anyway, he then warns him that that the strangers are coming for him, and so is the crazy policeman guy. That they're probably chasing after him too, but he decides to take his own life, putting an end.
Only way out.
Yeah, ending his life and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Emma goes to the prostitute's house that was mentioned.
Yeah.
And she-
Interesting that.
yeah,
How
and
did you know where it was?
Oh wait, no, wait. I'm running ahead of the story. Meanwhile, the strangers they develop those new memories of John, and then imprint them into
one of their own.
Mr. Hand.
Which is Richard O'Brien.
Yes.
Sinister
Yeah,
Richard.
and now he has all these memories in him. And
They're going to use him to track him down.
Yeah, they think that everyone that he goes, and everyone who will seek him out will know him, and they'll be able to track him down that way.
Exactly.
Yes. Anyway, moving on. So now they have this sort of thing. They then arrive at the prostitute's house and think that they'll be able to find him there, and find information from her about wherever he went to. But of course, she doesn't know anything, and Mr. Hand kills her.
In the same way that Mr. Murdoch would have been programmed to do so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, then Emma arrives at the same prostitute's place, and she sees the body, and the dead body has all these spirals all carved on her body.
Yeah.
See, the victims, they all have these same markings, and you will see this appear throughout this movie when you think about it.
Spiral.
I think it usually just means that you're trapped.
That's what they're talking about. Yeah, spirals all over the place. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think too.
There was even a scene where the detective, while he woke up from his sleep, he's noticed in the coffee a spiral
In
thing.
coffee.
This is in the director's cut, just so you're not confused.
Yeah, well, the director's cut was very similar to the original cut, but we got the director's cut.
Yes.
And that's the way the director and the guy who wrote it really wanted it. It's
Yeah,
just that
they didn't want a narration at the beginning.
Yeah.
Before, it was a narration explaining ahead of time what's
on,
going on.
But it wasn't really needed because it was explained.
Because they want to keep...
The movie explained it.
They wanted to keep that part of the story a secret till the audience actually watches the whole
So if you
thing.
sit down there and watch it, it starts coming together. And you say, And so someone said, are we going to watch a movie and then it's going to be about this, that, and the other, blah, 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 and this is going to happen, and blah. Where's the suspense?
True.
Yeah.
So, moving back on. So, Emma arrives at the prostitute's house and she sees her dead, and the detective is there who followed her again.
Yeah, he's following her.
Yeah.
Because he thought that she might lead him to John.
Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving back up. Now back to John and his uncles. He arrives there at, it's sort of a
Aquarium?
aquarium.
Yeah.
And they then have a brief look at some
Old
slides, and he doesn't remember most
Any
of the
of them.
stuff. And there's one big issue here, because John notices that in one photo he had a scar.
He would have been
from
12 or 13 years old or something, has a scar on his arm from a fire.
See, his mum and dad were killed in a fire.
And John got burnt.
Yeah, and when he rolls up his sleeve,
There's no
there's
scar.
no scar
No
on,
scar there.
hinting that the strangers made a bit of a goof up.
It's a fake.
Yeah. Unless the memories create the scar.
Well, his memory would help as well, probably. But he hasn't got a memory of the scar, so he can't make it.
Yeah. So anyway, he then goes to his room, and there's he notices an old book that he written when he was
He
7.
draw pictures and write stories
Yeah, and it's blank.
in. Yeah, he's always writing it, but every page is blank.
Yeah.
But later on, the police guy gets it, and it's full of images.
Pictures and scribbles. Anyway, eventually Carl calls Emma, telling her that John is there and he's acting kind of weird and stuff like that. And
Kind of weird.
yeah, and Emma's not the only one there. The detective's there, and the detective thinks he's guilty as...
Well, I think
not guilty.
at this stage, I
He
think
knows something anyway.
I think he knows at this point something's not quite right. He still thinks John knows something or part of what's going on he's involved with, but I don't think he thinks he's actually the killer.
Yeah.
Because there's something in the back of his mind at the moment brewing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to see him so he can talk to him.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this outside of Emma's apartment, Mr. Han overhears the conversation, and he follows to where Carl lives, and eventually the strangers downstairs, they start turning everyone's minds off, and then John has to try to... This is another chase scene where he tries to run and avoid the strangers. There was even a scene where he's walking up the stairs and they start stretching on beyond.
You're like in those
on and
dreams
on.
you have, like the stairs go on and on and on. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those dreams. It was really incredible, and he soon arrives at the top, and he notices all the buildings slowly shifting, changing, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he then starts running from rooftop to rooftop.
A bit like a James Bond movie. Yeah.
Eventually, Mr. Hand corners him, and they start trying to attack. He starts attacking him, but then John gets the upper hand and asks for answers. And eventually, Mr. Hand tells them that they fashioned the city out of stolen memories.
Yeah,
and
out
stuff.
of the human beings that they stole from
Yeah.
supposedly planet Earth. We do not know.
Yes, and they want to experiment and find out what makes them tick and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly right.
Yeah, and eventually John asks them, "Why are you doing this?" And and Mr. Hand says, "We want to be like you." And he says that I know everything you're thinking. I mean, that you ought to think.
Yeah.
Mr. Hand tells him about how he knows about the ocean and how he wants to run on the beach as a child, and thinking of Emma at the moment when they first met and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he knows all that stuff. And John asks him flat out again, what are you? And of course, Mr. Hand says flat out, "You've seen what we are. We use your dead as vessels."
Yeah.
Meaning they've been using dead bodies probably to
Walk around
as
and stuff,
as a bit of a host.
Yeah, exactly right. Not bad.
Because
Hey?
underneath it all, there's sort of like a squid-like creature.
Well, they're actually, they look like squid-like creatures, but they're actually energy creatures.
Yes.
But they got the shape of a squiddy type thing. Yeah.
Yes, very creepy, guys.
Yep.
Trust me. Anyway, moving on. So John quickly tries to attempt to get away from these guys, and eventually he nearly gets cornered at one point in one scene. But eventually, the brains of the people start waking up again, and that just in time, the detective and Emma arrive to save John's, before.
Yeah. The detective said, "Get in the car."
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and John jumps into the car, he embraces Emma, and they drive off.
Well, that's what I said. I think at the time where I think the detective was starting to think there's something going on.
Yeah. Anyway, he then interrogates John in the interrogation room, telling him about how one of the prostitutes that he met that night was dead and all that stuff. And John denies that he killed her because he says she was alive when he left her. And again, he kept saying, "What's all this about?" And he demands, "What's these drawings about?"
He had a book. Yeah, that
and
book
John
that
is
he found these.
and John is confused because he doesn't understand what's going on, and the detective is not the only one. He says,
But he thinks
something's off.
not quite right.
And then John asks him flat out, "Do you know where Shell Beach is?" And of course, the detective tries to remember.
He said, "Of course I do."
And
then
it's a blank.
know.
And this is where John says, "When was the last time you did something during the day?" And the detective.
And he said, "Not just an old memory.
Yeah.
Recently."
Yeah, like yesterday, last week.
Yeah.
And
A few hours ago.
yeah, it's
And he said he's looking like he's thinking, and he can't remember
the last time.
seeing daylight.
Yeah, meaning.
In real daylight, not in a memory. Yeah.
Yeah, not because you work the night shift or anything like that.
I did as a security guard. I know about this.
Yeah, I can understand that if that's a little bit of an excuse, but that's not.
It's like a barn owl.
Yes, and exactly. So anyway, detective is baffled and he can't even answer his own questions.
Yeah, and he's starting to think there's something going on.
Yeah, and then John gives him a bit of an example of his powers by showing him lift the book in the air.
He said, "How do you explain this?" And then this book floats across the table or something. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
He makes it levitate.
Yeah.
So explain this then. Oops.
And
okay.
he doesn't explain it because he's a bit baffled still. Anyway, John then meets up with Emma in the what's that room
the interview, where the prisoners get visitors, the visiting room. We'll call the visiting room.
Yeah. I'm not really sure about this.
And
I never gone to
talking,
prison.
and then he just touches the glass shatters.
Yeah, he then asks her that that this affair that she had never existed, and that last night that that was the first time they met each other. And here in this scene, she then opens up to him and tells him that she kind of, when she saw him in their apartment, she just didn't recognize him or knew him.
Yeah, she had an empty feeling about it as well. Even though she knew who he was, she felt like it was the first time she was meeting him.
Yeah.
Something wasn't quite right.
Yeah, if they never knew each other until that night.
Yeah.
And she says, "How can that be?" Because she remembers that she
got married 4 years ago or something.
and she remembered that she fell in love with him, and she remembered how she felt like she lost him.
Yeah.
And this is where John shows her his power by touching the glass,
And it shatters.
and then they kiss, and the police escort him out.
Yeah, anyway, moving right along. This is going to be a very long interview.
So the detective then decides that the case is still not closed. So he decides to take John and tries to find Dr. Schreiber and try to make sense of it all. Yeah. Meanwhile, the strangers arrive at the police station and plan on taking John. But eventually
too late.
Yeah, they tried to get the police constable, whatever his name is, to escort them to John's cell.
And John's not there.
Yeah.
Mr. Detective Bumstead has already taken him.
And
parts unknown.
And Mr. Hand cuts the commissioner's
the
throat.
commissioner, the sergeant's head. He wasn't a commissioner.
Anyway, moving on. So
anyway,
John arrives at the pool,
Dr. Schreiber's
and
where he is. Yeah.
And Dr. Schreiber then explains that the strangers have a phobia to water.
So that's
why he's always
swimming.
there all the time.
Yeah, that's his private place. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, irrespective, moving right along.
Yeah. So moving right along, he then shows him the same syringe, a different syringe, and tells him that there's no time, that he must get this in your mind before it's too late.
Yeah. So you get all these other memories.
Yeah.
Implants.
Eventually, detective arrives and says that you're acting mentally disturbed, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And John asks Mr. Schreiber, what is exactly in this syringe? And the Schreiber says, all the answers that you need.
Yeah. And
eventually, John pockets
He puts
the
it in
syringe.
his pocket he didn't want to throw away just in case he needed it later on.
Yeah, and eventually they decide to get going.
And then he said, let's go find Shell Beach.
Yeah, because the detective wants to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And he wants to know where to find Shell Beach.
Yeah, because he thinks that this has got something to do with what's going on.
Yeah, so they then get into the car. They head to the last bridge, and the bridge.
No, it was the city outskirts, and there's supposed to be a bridge here.
Yeah.
There's no bridge.
Yeah, eventually.
So that part of his memory is okay.
Yeah, they eventually charter a boat.
They don't charter. They found a rowboat.
They found a rowboat, and Dr. Schreiber then talks about what's going on. He talks about how the strangers abducted the inhabitants and put them on this table.
Like the Argo City, in old Superman stories, yeah.
So they're forced to stay there without even realizing it,
and they think everything's normal.
And Dr. Schreiber then explains his past, why he fits in, where he fits into this.
He knows how to mix the memories.
Yeah, and the strangers they kind of told him to erase his own memories. Only the relevant scientific part to his mind remained intact.
Yeah.
So the rest of the stuff remained, scientific stuff, but the rest was
his memories of where they came from,
and whether or not he had family, friends, or anything like that
Dog,
had been
cat,
gone.
Yeah.
So that's about
Whatever.
And then John asks him, why what about my past? What about my uncle? Why can't I remember anything? All that stuff. And Dr. Schreiber explains, you were never a boy in this place, and that all these those things that you've, like the drawings you've seen, were made by your gift. something like that.
Yeah, you created them in your
Yeah.
head. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. So, meanwhile, Emma is returned to her apartment, which I think was a silly mistake because the strangers know everything where you are
Mr.
live.
Hand. He's very
Yeah.
handy, hey?
Yeah. He eventually arrives there with his colleagues, and they plan to imprint her with a new memory, a new name, and all that stuff. But before they could do that, Hand has a trick up his sleeve. Get it?
He has, yeah. He has his arm up his sleeve as
I
well.
get
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
So he has one last thing to do with her before she gets imprinted with a new identity. So back to John and our detective and Dr. Schreiber.
They finally get.
They soon arrive at their final destination outside a door.
And Dr. Schreiber says, you don't want to go in there.
Yeah.
And I open the door, and there's a
And-
big sign saying Shell Beach.
And,
Stuck to a wall.
And Dr. Schreiber explains that there is no ocean. There is nothing beyond the city.
There's nothing beyond that wall, even.
Yeah, and then John and the detective start peeling at the poster and start banging on the wall.
Yeah, they
the
found
bricks.
some sledgehammers or something
Yeah.
there, or a piece of wood, and start trying to break the wall
Yeah,
down.
and then John, using his mind, pushes the last bits of brick into
Outside,
out.
and you see outer space. You see
Yeah.
stars and
Yeah.
a dark void. And,
yeah. And you see a bit
And then
of a
the
force field.
Bumstead, the detective realizes that John Murdoch
Was not crackers.
was not crackers, and he's been telling the truth.
Yeah, and the strangers arrive, and they say, and Mr. Hand says, "So now you know the truth."
And then there's a bit of a fight.
Yeah,
And
the detective
unfortunately-
takes a gun and starts shooting at the strangers.
Well, they're already dead. That's not going to help, is it?
Yeah. Eventually, one of the strangers struggles with him, and they fall out into the
Through the hole,
up
yeah.
to the hole into
Yeah.
into space.
Just outside the hole is a
Force field.
force field about 2 or 3 meters away from the wall. So you got atmosphere next to the wall, but as soon as you go through that force field,
No oxygen.
it's no oxygen. It's just like going to space like we would normally. So
Yeah.
as soon as he hits that, he dies.
Yeah. So both that stranger and the detective both die, and John was about to retaliate, and take revenge, but Mr. Hand says, if you so much as move, Emma's gonna die.
And he says, why should I care? She's not my wife. But he says, you do care.
Yeah.
And that's the thing which makes us human.
Yeah, and that he remarks that I'm going to be the monster that you were going to meant to be.
Yeah, exactly right.
And he says, should I end her life now, as you would have? And John, feeling a little bit, no.
He didn't want. He's falling. He's getting feelings for her, even though he didn't really know her that well.
Yeah. He then drops his weapon and says, do not hurt her, please.
And the guy said, "Okay, I'll be good as long as you
Give
up and go to sleep."
And he does, eventually.
And he says, "Okay, sleep," and he falls down the ground unconscious.
Yeah, and eventually the strangers take him to their
The lair downstairs.
and they then do a thorough examine. Well, not thorough exam. They just notice his fingerprints having that spiral I mentioned.
Yes, instead of ordinary
They
fingerprints.
then remark that he's evolved.
Yeah, to a next level, which is
Hint, hint.
somewhere in between human and alien.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe it was the atmosphere that may have changed
Well,
it.
maybe the programming by Dr. Schreiber.
Anyway, now that they established this, some of the members want to kill him and all that stuff, and
But
their
the leader,
problems.
Mr.
But
Buggerlug, Mr.
Mr.
Sock
Book,
Mr. Book, whatever, Sock Book,
then
whatever,
tells him-
magazine.
yeah.
Yeah.
then tells them that while John is powerful and dangerous, for that matter, he would probably provide them what they need.
Yeah, he's what they've been looking for.
Yeah, and they say now that they have John, they don't need the other test
So they want
subjects.
that- so they
they're
want to
going to
close
turn
the experiment
yeah,
down.
so they're going to turn everyone's minds off, and they're probably
And the buildings and everything else. And
yeah, so saying shutting it down forever and all this stuff. And Dr. Schreiber, who's still there, he's told to imprint John with their collection of memories.
collective memories.
Yeah.
However,
he then takes out John's one that was still in his
which is
pocket.
the one he wanted to put in there.
Yeah. He then tells John that he's gonna just put these memories into his mind and be able to help him.
Yeah, and he does.
Yeah, it goes in, and John's
Super John.
yeah, and John gets a few flashbacks. He then sees that Dr. Schreiber has
Put himself in there.
put himself in there
to explain things to him.
explain things to him, and like if he was say if this really took place, he would have say 20 or at least 15 years of knowledge from those moments.
Yeah. A quick upload.
Yeah, so it was like an upload, like a computer uploading memories.
Yeah, and also explained how to tune better and made him stronger.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually, the strangers notice something going down or wrong, and then Mr. Brooke notices that the syringe that was meant to put into John was in Dr. Schreiber's hand, and he then tries to break his hand and knocks the syringe right out of the hand, breaking it. Eventually, John finally springs into action using his powers.
And he just melts off all his restraints.
Yeah.
Just chained onto something, and all those things just fell away. And then it started a mind fight.
Yeah, he starts...
A bit like reminiscent of Luke Skywalker and the Emperor, wasn't it?
Yeah, sort of. So, moving back on. So,
well, I'll say which one's which, so...
moving on.
Okay.
So our hero then fights each of the strangers, pushing them as far as he can with his mind, and he then frees Dr. Schreiber from his restraints.
Yep, he had some sort of cage thing wrapped around him so he can't move too fast. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, and then he starts fighting a mental battle with Mr. Brooke.
With the psychokinesis sort of stuff, yeah.
They start fighting until then the whole place down below starts exploding.
And everything. And anyway, irrespective.
Eventually...
he fights Mr. Book and kills Mr. Book.
Yeah, and eventually... all the other strangers were either killed or in hiding.
Yeah, a lot of them got killed, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving along. Then John asks Dr. Schreiber, "Where's Emma?" And Dr. Schreiber says sadly that Emma's no longer Emma.
She's been implanted with a new personality and new memories.
Yeah, and John is a little distressed about this, and he says, "Why don't you give her back her memory?" And Dr. Schreiber says he can't because the machine which holds all the memories has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And now... Well,
no more manipulation.
Yeah, and then Dr. Schreiber asks, "What are you going to do now, John?" And John says, "I'm going to fix things. Now that I have this power, I'm going to make these machines do what I want."
Yeah, now that's quite interesting, that, because all the people there were living a life controlled by the aliens. Now they're going to live a life being controlled by John.
Or something like that.
Okay.
So anyway, moving along, he then gets the clock that makes people's minds close down, operating again.
Yeah.
And it starts moving, and I imagine he's going to continue ticking away.
And anyway. And
eventually, John heads off and
goes upstairs. He starts reconstructing everything. He's walking down the street, and buildings are rebuilding themselves. And, yeah.
Meanwhile, Emma, now Anna, I should mention, that now that she's imprinted and now changed to a new identity.
She got a new job.
She's now a theatre...
Oh, yeah. Earlier she was a singer in a nightclub. Now she's a ticket seller at a theatre. Yeah.
Yes, so she wakes from her sleep, and is going to take a bus down to Shell Beach.
Surprisingly, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things John does here is that he creates an ocean outside the city limits.
He wants Shell Beach, so he extends the force field around the city to encompass a spit of land and the beach and whatever going out to Shell Beach and everything else.
Yeah.
And pours all this water around the city.
Yeah.
And he makes the sun come up.
Yeah.
And I read about it. He didn't make it come. He turned the city around to face the sun.
I see.
So the sun was already there. Well, a sun. And he's actually turned it around, so they actually got it. So they're actually going to have daylight.
Yeah, so...
That'll kill off all the aliens.
Exactly. John soon heads down to the same spot here where he was last with the detective and Schreiber when they were going to head out to Shell Beach, but actually met up with a poster.
Yeah.
And he then sees Mr. Hand there, saying that he's dying, and the imprint is not agreeable with his
With his kind of creature. So,
and he just wanted to know how it feels and all that stuff.
And he said, "You're looking in the wrong place."
Yeah, he says that, you knew how I was supposed to feel. That person was never me, never was. And he says, you want to know what makes us human? You're not going to find it in here, in the head.
Yeah, no, I think it's alluding to the spiritual side of things, yeah.
So he says, you're looking at the wrong place. He then finally opens the door, and then light is let in, and we see a beautiful ocean, the blue sky. It's just so pretty.
Blue skies looking at me.
Yeah, and John sees Emma that's in a
Anna now.
Anna now on a
A jetty.
a jetty, and
looking at the ocean, and she's saying, he says, it's so bright.
It's so beautiful.
And a beautiful something, yeah. So, well, hasn't seen light for a long time, have they?
Yeah, and John asks her, does she know where Shell Beach is? And she points it out, and of course I think John would probably dub that, definitely that is Shell Beach.
And they're both heading in the same general direction.
So they kind of introduce each other, and John says, I'm John Murdoch, and they sort of restart their lives again. It's the end.
Yeah, isn't that lovely? Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this movie because we're already cracking almost an hour now.
Yeah, it's an awesome movie.
Now, I'm going to gloss over a few things quickly. Generally, the reviews were average to good.
That's good.
Okay, there was even the negative ones weren't that negative.
Oh, it's a relief.
They were negative, but so I didn't like that. But there's some other good redeeming qualities in it.
Thank goodness.
My thing is, why didn't it do box office that well? And I'm just wondering whether something else came out about the same time, or the storyline was a little bit too complicated for some people. Don't know. I liked it. I understood it. Sarah saw this years ago when she was a kid, and she liked it and she understood it. So it couldn't have been that complicated.
I kind of enjoyed the surprises, the surprise twist, which is kind of cool.
If you expect to sit down there and be given everything served up to you on a platter, no, it's a thinking person's movie. You got to sit there and watch it and put and some of the jigsaw puzzle pieces start slotting into place. It's like a detective story, I suppose, and it was basically because it was written to be about the police inspector chasing a serial killer. So it had elements of, say, the Maltese Falcon and those other old film noir movies.
Well, it was the era in this movie is 1950s, 1960s.
About the 50s. About when the film noir era was, and I think they had that coming into it. And lots of good groovy things happening here.
Yeah, I like the fact in one of the scenes, the motel scene that John Murdoch was inhabiting at the beginning of this movie.
Well, that's the prostitute's place, probably.
No, not that one.
Okay.
It was no, that was.
Oh
that
no,
was
I
his
was
room.
upstairs when he
So
left
it
here.
was his motel room was 614. In the Bible, John chapter 6, version 14 talks about the coming of the Savior, which indicates maybe
So
John is being a savior in this movie.
A little bit like the guy in Matrix, Neo. He was their savior to save the people and everything, and
Yeah, so both these movies, like Matrix and The Dark City, they deal with a savior coming to help make this
correct things. Wow, I never thought about that. Very good. That was a good pickup. Anyway,
I didn't think about that. Maybe the number on the door had any significance, but
well, now we do. Now we know. Anyway, going on. I can't say too much. I don't want to drag. I could talk for hours on this movie. Like I said before, that Rich O'Brien was approached to do the role of Mr. Hand because of his portrayal of Riff Raff in Rocky Horror Show. Keith Sutherland character was going to be played by John Hurt, who actually became the detective. So yeah, casting is really good. I think they got the casting pretty all right.
Yeah.
Keith Sutherland, whether you like him or not, is a good actor.
Yeah, another
Yeah,
thing about this
yeah,
production
yeah,
is that Alex, the
yeah,
filmmaker and the screenwriter who wrote this,
yeah.
doesn't think of the strangers as evil. He
No, they're,
thinks
they're just trying to save their race.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
thinks of them more of a tragic villain.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What he feels are the best kind of bad guy.
Yeah,
They do what they feel they must in order to survive, and
Exactly
then
right.
they must use human
And they
beings the
died.
way they find a way to continue their own species, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Anyway, moving right along. I'm not going to go for all the reviews because, like I said before, the reviews were generally favourable, but they're just the odd little negative bit was thrown in there.
Yeah.
Now, there was a few influences I mentioned before. Prius referenced the film noir of the 40s and 50s, such as The Maltese Falcon, I mentioned before. That helped with the film feeling, that sort of period. And he also mentioned the Twilight Zone. They meant Twilight Zone because it's an alternate reality, like Twilight Zone did that in a few of their shows as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, had all that sort of stuff going in. And like I said before, it was going to be based around the detective. They changed it to the guy who was chasing.
I think it's a little
I
bit
think
better.
it worked better. Yeah.
Yeah, because as I said before, with Fire Twister, it would have been that movie would have improved if that not only assassins attack, chasing after the good guys,
Yeah.
but the good policemen would be chasing them too, because and make it a little bit of a
yeah.
who to trust, who to turn to,
Yep.
yada yada yada. It make you wonder: should I go to
Yep.
the police, or should I
Exactly.
or should I reach out to someone I don't know?
Anywho,
Anywho,
the design of the sets and everything was built. They didn't do any location shoots, of course. It wouldn't have worked. So everything had to be
constructed.
constructed, and it was one of the tallest sets they ever had.
Yeah, this was made
Yeah.
in Australia
down,
studio.
Yeah, down Fox Studios in Sydney. And they said the part of it was actually built on an amusement park site, and I think that's where Fox Studios was. That was the old showgrounds. That was like for American people, I don't know. We in Australia we had the thing like Easter Show. We had rides and show bags, pavilions and whatever, and they took that over some years back, and that could have been that where they made the big sets up down there.
Okay.
One of the earlier movies. That they did quite well with it. I felt the realism of the sets was more scary than the movie.
I agree. It was very creepy.
It was creepy because it felt so real. And some of it, when they're downstairs in the clock area where the aliens were, they're on a budget, so a lot of that was stretched canvas with images on it
Cool.
to make it look real, but they had to keep the budget constraints down. Everything they did in this movie came together so well. Everything from the acting right down to special effects, props, everything. I think they made a damn fine movie out of this. I just can't understand why it didn't box office well.
Yeah, well, I did mention that audiences probably thought it was confusing.
Well, it might have been a little bit confusing for some people, but that's the whole point. If you're going to watch a sci-fi nowadays, everything's handed up to you. It's like, come on, follow me, I'm going to drag you through the movie. Now, if you watch an old suspense thriller movie, sometimes or even nowadays, you've got to sit down there and watch it. And I think this is more of a suspense thriller with sci-fi as the main theme of it. Because obviously it's set with aliens and whatever. But I still, it's a suspense thriller and not a straight sci-fi. And if you're looking at people like sci-fi, they may not like suspense thrillers as much. And I think that cross-genre affected this box office, maybe.
I did like the
I like
fact
it.
that Jennifer Connor,
Yeah,
she
Conley,
played a singer at a nightclub, which is
and
cool.
actually, she didn't sing, somebody else did.
Yeah. And one of the songs I like was the Sway song.
Yes, Sway. Actually, they did two songs well known, Sway and The Night Over 1,000 Eyes, and they're actually performed by Anita Kelsey, Kelsey, and Jennifer mouthed it, yeah, that word.
Yeah.
Mimed it quite nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to go too much more because it is getting long in the tooth now. We're well over an hour. But all I can say is the acting's good, the storyline's good as a suspense thriller. Okay, hold that thought.
And I do like the
yeah.
fact that it leaves the audience wondering what's going on.
What's going to happen now? Is John going to be a benevolent,
Dictator?
godlike creature who's going to take care of the people? What is he? Who knows?
I don't think he's going to be there.
He's going to be a nice guy, but it's open for a sequel if you wanted. But
And-
where will the sequel go?
Yeah, and I do question whether or not will John be able to recreate the whole entire world after. I mean, they're still on a sort of tabletop type island
But
thing.
you got to look at something here. Where's he getting his memories from? He hasn't got any memories.
Now he does.
He gave some Dr. Schreiber gave him some memories, and it's only what Dr. Schreiber has concocted to give him. So it's another false reality, another cave.
True.
So who knows? Anyway, irrespective.
But at least those memories became
But they're nice
useful
memories. They're nice
and
memories,
helped him defeat the strangers.
Yeah, they did. But anyway, irrespective.
Anyway.
I'm not going to talk much now because it's a good movie. It is available.
And maybe, just maybe,
Excuse me.
I like to think that one day the people will get smart and realize that maybe they can be able to find the old world eventually one day.
They won't be able. No one knows where it is. There's there's no imprints anywhere. They don't know where it is and
true.
how they get there.
I know, but I mean, if John and say a few people notice that their memories don't feel like memories,
But the real memories have been taken away. They won't. It's sort of like if I cut your head off and put somebody else's head on, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have your memories anymore, would they?
I suppose you're
Now, what I was going to say is,
I like to think one day that they'll realize the truth. Maybe.
well, I don't think it's worthwhile. If you gave the people the truth,
They'll
they
panic.
wouldn't be happy.
No, that's true.
Like the Matrix. So as long as I was asleep and they made it real, they wouldn't care. Anyway, now what I'm going to say is, on Amazon you can buy or rent it. Now, not too many available to buy, but eBay, there's lots of them. So I recommend anybody who likes a really, really good movie, suspense, thriller, sci-fi, and I'll put it in that order, not sci-fi, suspense, thriller. I'd say suspense, thriller, sci-fi. This is a good movie. I think it's underrated. I think it's gone under the radar a tad.
I mean,
yeah.
Mike here, he was the one who rented it from a video store
long
when we
time
were
ago.
living in New South Wales, and
Yeah.
there we watched it for the first time,
Yep.
and then, well, it still sticks in my
And
mind
that's what,
after all these
that
years.
was probably not long after it came out, because it came out in 1998, and we saw it about then.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah.
I like the
But anyway,
I was going through a sci-fi phase at that time.
and now she's going through all my movies. Anyway, irrespective. I keep saying irrespective, folks, don't I?
Of course.
Let's moving right along. I'm going to grade it now. I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. Primarily because I like a good suspense thriller. I like the sets. I like the way it came together. The continuity works. I think the whole lot works, this movie.
Okay, I'm gonna rate it 10 out of 10 2 for this
Yeah.
one. 2.
Cool.
So
There
it
you
was
go, folks.
So it's worth a watch, guys.
It's a good watch. Like I said, it's called Dark City, fine, but it's a dark suspense thriller. Really, in the way it comes over, it is. There might be a couple of tongue-in-cheek lines thrown in there, but overall, it's a dark feeling, broody film,
Yeah.
and it's really good.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I did like the symbolism in this
Oh,
movie.
yeah,
I like the fact that our hero tries to find this place, Shell Beach,
Yeah.
as his primary goal in this.
Your primary goal, yeah, and because he knows of it, but he can't remember it.
Yeah.
It's part of his past, but he's not got no memories. So, if someone said, "Hey, you came from Sydney, wouldn't you want to go down and have a look at Sydney?" Well, of course you would. Well, I was born here somewhere, yeah, and that's where he's looking for his roots. Anyway,
True. I do wonder, the world they came from before they came to that Dark City thing. I wonder if it was either a modern world like or they said they fashioned it in
Out of collected
stolen
memories out of people's
stolen
heads.
memories.
You can go back and I can take a memory out of someone's head now of ancient Roman times, and they could do it Roman style if you wanted to.
True.
But they didn't want to go that far back.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. I mean,
So
they
I would say honestly, it would have been in between the 50s and when they abducted the people.
maybe.
Yeah, and that's why it had a 50s feel to it.
Exactly, probably.
Aha.
Unless they got these stolen memories from older people. Who
Well,
knows?
not necessarily, but they took it from collective memories from everybody. So they would, yeah, and the architecture, it was cosmopolitan. It was a bit of London architecture, a bit of New York architecture, a bit of something else. Yeah, it was hotspots because of the collective memories.
True.
So anyway, I want to wrap it up now because I'm having trouble talking.
So,
Do you want to say anything else before we finish off?
yeah, this is about it from me too.
Okay.
So I definitely advise you guys definitely check it out.
It's a good watch, guys.
It's definitely a good watch. I know that we say this a lot. I know.
No, we don't normally review a movie that we're not going to recommend you watch. Because, firstly, why bother? And secondly, Sarah wouldn't sit through it. Now, did I say about...
That's a lie.
But anyway, like I said, if you're going to buy a copy, eBay's got lots of them. Amazon now got a couple of thingies. So anywhere else, you go and buy a copy. Enjoy. I'd actually go for Blu-ray, get the best copy, because to make the most of the special effects and the props and the backgrounds and everything. It's really good. It's got good atmos.
Yeah. So, yeah. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope you guys may join us for the next one.
I hope so.
So, this is Sarah Stephenson
And Michael.
saying we'll see you guys for the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.